Let's have a closer look at node edge coloring. Basically, we have three different approaches. We have static coloring, which is illustrated here at the top left. We have alarm coloring here at the top right, and analytical coloring at the bottom. Let's start off with static coloring, and this is basically what we have been talking about throughout the configuration videos. So if we go to settings, we see the different types of nodes we have configured, potentially with overrides within one query. And basically all the colors that have been configured over here are static for one type of query. A second type of coloring is alarm coloring. Alarm coloring goes back or links back to the queries where the nodes and edges originate from. If in those queries we have a link to parameters, then those parameter values and colors are retrieved and subscribed to, so they are real-time updated in the node edge. You can see that, for example, in the pop-up. If there is a parameter that is monitored in the query, we can see a statelet in front of the value. And the summary color of all the monitored parameters in that pop-up is reflected back into the node summary color, in the full color of the full node. One of the highest severity parameters is also displayed below the node. So in here, it's the CPU percentage of that pot. Coloring is not only done on nodes but also on the edges. We have the same thing over here, the LEDs in front of a monitored parameter, and the highest severity is reflected back into the line coloring. A third type of coloring is what we call analytical coloring. Analytical coloring has no relation to alarm coloring at all. No, it is custom coloring that is fully defined inside your dashboard. You can do the configuration from a filter component, which we will illustrate later, but you can also do it hard-coded in your dashboard. Then you go to the layout section to do that. We have the column filters over here, and here you can basically add any column of any node and configure ranges for the values of each and every column. We have 5 configurations already active here. Let's illustrate that in the node edge. So if we hover over a node here, which represents a pot, we have the face, which is colored over here, and we have the total TX and total RX also colored like the configuration mentions over here. For the namespaces, we have one column which is colored, and that's the status. And then we have one left, and that's for the edges. There we have the namespace colored according to what is specified over here. So let's have a look how it is configured. If we expand one of the columns here, we see a numeric column with a range of values. So we have here a value going from 0 to 1000 gigabyte displayed in a greenish color. And if we click it, we can see we can just pick any color of any kind. We can also take some presets. If you like the alarm colors, for example, you can pick one of the alarm colors. But again, it's not related to any alarm, and the color does not represent a value at all. You can also take the theme colors from your dashboard theme. Maybe we can add an extra column here to see how that goes. Let's take, for example, CPU percentage and specify a range over here. If I select it, I can specify more detailed values. Let's take from 10 to 100%, like this. If we select it, we can pick a color, take this color, then we can also specify a second range. and specify some values. And if we select it, we can take a greenish color like that. You can also specify colors for the exception values. Do that. And then if we look into the pop-up of these nodes, we can see that we have an extra column that is colored over here. For alarm coloring, we can aggregate the different colors of the different parameters into one summary color, being the most severe color, and use that color as the line color for our edges or as the fill color for our nodes. For analytical coloring, we cannot do that because the colors have no order. So the colors we define in our settings have no order. So we cannot say that color green is higher than color yellow or orange or whatsoever. So the only thing we can do then is choose one parameter, choose one column from our query and take that one as the fill color or as the line color in our node edge. To see the active color in a certain configuration, we can look at the labels of the different columns. The one is bold, the one in bold is currently active, and we can change that in the configure color UI. So we can activate that by clicking on the top right icon over here. Here we can see what type of coloring is currently active. So we see we are currently in an analytical coloring, and then we can choose or which parameter or which column that should be taken as the fill color for our nodes. So if we change that, we see that the fill color adapts, and we can also see that the value which is present here in the pop-up is also displayed below the nodes over here. In this pop-up, we can also change to static coloring, so to the example in the top left, and also to the alarm coloring, which is displayed in the top right. In this example, we have edges represented by 2 rows per connection. So one part of the connection has metrics from one side, the source side of the connection, and then we have another line in our query which represents the metrics from the destination side of the connection. So we see that the lines are split up, and each half of the connection shows their colors. So one color is taken here. So we have analytical coloring, and there is one column specified as the line color for the edges. So we can change it to the other one. So we can switch TX with RX, and then we'll typically see a swap in coloring. So what is green will go red and vice versa. We can change to alarm coloring as well, and then we see that the big difference between alarm coloring and analytical coloring, and that is that alarm coloring have a summary state. So here we measure both RX and TX, and we also always show the highest severity color based on the alarms, of course. So that's why the lines have a full color which is the same for both ends, because it's each time the highest severity that is applied over here. Whereas for analytical coloring, if we go back, we can see that okay, there is only one parameter that defines the color, so that's either RX or TX. So that makes a difference from which sides of the connection you measure it. The same way you can go, of course, to static coloring, where we have no color defined, and we can also look at the nodes, for example. So in the nodes here we have analytical coloring with the software version here as metric to define the color, and we can go back to alarm coloring. There is one parameter, the system uptime measured over here, and we can also go to static coloring, which has some green style. So we should be able to see that over here. indeed, we have a green fill color for the base node configuration over here.